had this presentation, I'm sharing my screen. So the title of my talk is Shaping the Future of a Nation Using Smart and Additive Manufacturing. So I'll be covering the very latest concept, what it is exactly, the smart manufacturing or Industry 4.0, and then it's how really additive manufacturing becomes important in the environment of Industry 4.0. This is what my intention is to cover in this lecture, and also you will have a feel that how really these technologies are important for shaping the manufacturing sector of a country, and therefore the future, that is the GDP of the any nation. So this is how I'll go through. Let me see how much I can speak, because my plan is to talk about around 1 hour, and after that my research student will take over at 11, and then you will see the lab. So basically online lab visit you will have, you will see some software demonstration as well as some printers which we have in our lab, so that my student will demonstrate you after 11. So for maybe around 20 minutes, he will be taking the session. So I'll be talking about what is Industry 4.0, or what we call as today smart manufacturing also. And then I'll talk about the additive manufacturing or 3D printing, which was earlier known as rapid prototyping. Also, it started like rapid prototyping, and today with very much with a lot of enhanced capabilities of these prototyping systems, today they have become additive manufacturing or 3D printing. And then I will also show you some very latest videos and maybe some latest additive manufacturing processes which are quite advanced. Most of them are metal systems, or if they are polymer systems, they are extremely new. So this is what my plan is. So let me start with the Industry 4.0, which we also call as Industry 4 Smart Manufacturing. So this is nothing but the fourth industrial revolution. So what does we mean by fourth industrial revolution? Like you may be knowing that there has been number of industrial revolutions. Today we are at fourth. So what was first industrial revolution? Like in the very beginning, we used to have like primitive machines, correct? The steel development was not that good. It was not that proper. And then at the same time, there was not a prime mover. Basically, there was not a exactly, we can say there was no prime mover, no engine which can run our machines efficiently. So earlier days, it was the human muscular power, means humans used to drive, or the kettles were employed to drive the systems or the machines, the old machines. So with the development of, like you can see here, I have written that there was a steel industry development, then there were some other developments like mining and metallurgy, machine tools. But the main concept here, or the key word here, was the mechanization. Mechanization means the development of basically the steam engine, the James Watt steam engine, which brought first industrial revolution, because the human muscular efforts, or the power, energy which was drawn by the kettles, that was substituted by the steam power, or by using steam engine, James Watt steam engine. So that brought like all these technologies together actually, but the main thing was the steam engine, and mechanization is the key word, which brought the first industrial revolution, and it took place at the end of 18th century. Then the second industrial revolution, if we talk about, then that is nothing but mass production. So continuous line mass production kind of system, when it was brought, because with the development of civilization, and we can say technological developments, there was a need of to replicate the products, and you have to maintain the quality, you have to maintain the accuracy. So there was a need to have develop such systems which can produce the components in mass, or produce the products in mass. So that was the time when the concept of continuous assembly line or production line that was developed. Then there were other assisting technologies also, which has been mentioned here, which may involve electrification, and then use of globalization, then engines, turbines, telegraph, gas, water supply, all these things together actually. But the key point here is the continuous production, that is the production line kind of thing. And this industrial revolution took place approximately 100 years after that. That was the beginning of 20th century or something like that. Then the third industrial revolution took place around 1970s or so. So it was it was just 50 years back, we'll say. So when there was a development of computer microprocessor means when the electronics was actually developed. In other words, you can say. So with the development of microprocessor, basically the concept of digital manufacturing that emerged, the concept of numerical control of machine tools that came into the picture, the automation that was a low cost automation, along with the PLCs, etc., that started developing. So here the idea was to replace the human mental effort. So once you employ a numerically controlled machine tool, correct? Once you employ a numerically controlled machine tools, what exactly you do? You try to actually replace the human mental effort. So human mental effort is replaced. But today with the lot of development of the information technologies, communication technologies, and a lot of digital data being there, which can be used to drive the manufacturing, that is known as smart manufacturing. So various components, if you want to see, of advanced manufacturing, they have IT, OT, advanced robotics, big data analytics, Internet of Things, correct? Then cloud computing, smart factory, machine learning, AI algorithms, and of course the cyber physical system. So when all these technologies together, they are driving actually the manufacturing, or they are used a lot for manufacturing or excellence in manufacturing, we call it smart manufacturing or Industry 4.0. That is the fourth industrial revolution. So you can see here in this slide, I have shown the timeline and also the level of complexity in manufacturing. So at the end of 18th century, we had this machines powered by steam or water that brought the first industrial revolution. Then with the continuous production line, it was the beginning of the 20th century, that is approximately 100 years. And then beginning of the 1970s or so, it is the third industrial revolution because of the use of electronics and IT for the production. And the last one is today we are talking about an industrial revolution which is based on cyber physical systems, correct? So I'll tell you what is exactly the cyber physical system. I'll try to focus here. So the cyber physical system is like, if you can understand from this diagram, in the core, basically, we are having the digital information. This is the huge data, correct? Huge data. It is a database. You can In other words, you can consider like we have many handbooks, machining handbooks, and handbooks related to materials, handbooks related to any other fabrication processes. So we have actually variety of handbooks, correct? So all that data, if you bring in the digital form, correct, along with computational tools. So like for my application, for my product, I need very specific information. So how to dig out that specific information which is required for my particular application. So you need to have analytics, you need to take a decision. That's why you need to also use some artificial and machine learning algorithms to bring out a proper information of your use. And this information is to be communicated to different locations, because you have to control the physical entities based on the data and based on the communication, because the communication will ensure that the data reaches there, and that is going to control those physical entities. So this kind of environment, if you develop, that is known as cyber physical system. So a cyber physical system is a system of collaborating computational elements along and controlling physical entities. Cyber physical systems are physical and engineered systems whose operations are monitored, coordinated, controlled, and integrated by a computing and communication core. They allow us to add capabilities to physical systems by merging computing and communication with physical processes. So this is what we call as cyber physical system. So if we try to see the today's very modern, like a factory, correct? Like if you see modern factories, like we have, say for example, automobile companies here in our NCR region, correct? So most of these companies, they use assembly line, correct? They use actually a production line which is rigidly sequenced. It is a rigidly sequenced production line where you are actually assembling the automobile, or maybe some sub assemblies also you do. Like for example, for assembly of engine, for assembly of chassis along with the upper cabinet and all those things. So different assembly lines are there which are actually assembling these sub parts of a product, and finally you are assembling the full automobile or the full product. So this is a rigidly sequenced production line which is in use. But what we are calling today, what we are visualizing for tomorrow's factory, that is in a smart manufacturing environment, it will be something decoupled and it will be fully flexible. There will not be any rigidity, correct? And it will be highly integrated manufacturing systems. So as I have told you that from the concept of cyber physical system is the base. So you are basically getting the data, appropriate data, which will be communicated to these workstations, which may be of different places, and they are capable of producing the things or assembling the things, and the workflow is not like a rigid sequence. So that is the case, that the workflow is not like a rigid sequence. So we have to then see this, that it is decoupled, fully flexible, and highly integrated manufacturing system. So that kind of environment, actually what we are targeting now is the Industry 4.0 or smart manufacturing. So there are 6 design principles for smart manufacturing, and these design principles include interoperability. Interoperability means the ability of cyber physical system, that is workpiece carriers, assembly stations, products, that is humans and smart factories, to connect and communicate with each other via IoT, that is Internet of Things, and Internet of Services. So that is interoperability. Then virtualization, like you have to have virtual simulation models, you have to have augmented reality kind of modeling situations. So a virtual copy of the smart factory, which is created by linking sensor data with virtual plant models and simulation models. Correct? So there's a concept of digital twin that can be related with the virtualization. Then decentralization, that is the ability of cyber physical system within the smart factories to make decisions on their own. And then we have basically the real time capability, that is the capability to collect and analyze data and provide the insights immediately. And service orientation, that is the offering services via Internet of Services. And modularity, that's a very important point. Once again, though all points are important, but it is modularity means flexible adaptation of smart factories for changing requirements of different modules or individual modules. So these are the 6 principles which are governing the design of a smart manufacturing system. So if you want to see the different building blocks, the different technologies which are required or which are to be used or are being used for Industry 4.0, they start with the, say, big data analytics, robotics, simulation, augmented reality. We have the integration, which is horizontal and vertical, IoT and iOS. And of course, because everything you are doing in a digital environment, you need to have a cyber security. And then it comes the additive manufacturing, because ultimately whatsoever you design, you try to get the information, you have to produce it. So from the virtual world, when you want to convert it to the real world, when actually you want to have a physical component in your hand, you have to have some hardware which is going to produce it. So in the domain of Industry 4.0, it is the additive manufacturing which has been recommended as one of the most important, I'll say, tool for this purpose. Okay. Anyway, and let us then try to see that. So what we are talking in case of smart manufacturing, that it is a typically it is completely digital enterprise, correct? And here the entire value chain is digitized and integrated. So we start with the digital world, and all these functions till you start your production, basically they are virtual in nature, they are digital and virtual, and then you start converting it to the physical. That's how you lead to the real world. And various technologies or various you can say like simulation, product life cycle management, manufacturing execution system, totally integrated automation, life cycle and data driven services. They're important at the various stages of this digital enterprise which you're talking about today, and which is based on the very modern concept of advanced and this manufacturing. So today, like, we have to understand that what are the top skill sets needed for Industry 4.0, which are relevant in the Industry 4.0. So today, like, if you see that we are having all these things done today for our graduates, like there has to be complex problem solving ability, coordinating with others, people management, critical thinking, negotiation, quality control, service orientation, judgment and decision making, and active listening and creativity. But once you have to move to smart manufacturing environment, there are few typical things which have been included in this list. One is the emotional intelligence, and another is the cognitive flexibility. So why these are required? Because once you are working in smart manufacturing environment, it will be almost, a manless environment kind of thing. So emotional intelligence becomes very important. And at the same time, because everything is virtual, everything is digital, you have to have a very strong cognitive understanding, cognitive flexibility that has to be there, because it is highly virtual and network system. So you have to have cognitive flexibility. So means once we are preparing our engineers for the future to come, when we'll talk about the Industry 4.0, we have to prepare them with these kinds of skill sets, which is important. So what we have seen that in the additive manufacturing is one of the important technology which actually converts the digital product into the real product, which is a physical product. And in this complete environment of digital enterprise, which is smart manufacturing, it has capability to impact obviously the individual, society, your business, your nation, and then finally you're going to affect the economy of a country. So this is how we talk about that. This is how this industry 4.0 along with additive manufacturing has the capability to talk about to affect or to influence the economy of a nation, and therefore it can definitely affect the GDP of a country. So with this, let me talk about now the basics. Now, so I will switch over now for another 30 minutes on additive manufacturing, because additive manufacturing is a key technology which talks about these things, Industry 4.0. So let me talk about the basics of additive manufacturing or 3D printing, and then their applications in design and manufacturing. And also I would like to talk about that what are the distinctive features of additive manufacturing. So here basically the history, if I go to the history of additive manufacturing, then in additive manufacturing, it was developed as a design tool actually, correct? Because in the beginning, these machines were just rapid prototyping machines, and they used to be used for design evaluation stage and to finalize a particular design. So once your design is finalized, you are documenting the design, you are doing the computer-aided process engineering, then you are going for the production. So in a complete design cycle, actually it is the design evaluation stage, which is a very critical stage, which is a bottleneck because it may be very time-consuming step. Here, actually the use of rapid prototyping was important. So here, it was the prototyping or model making is one of the important steps to finalize a product design. And like earlier, it used to be in the hands of skilled craftsmen. They used to take very long time. That's why this step used to take long time, and the entire project used to get delayed if this is not done timely. So it was a bottleneck. Then people thought about having it done by soft prototyping with the development of CAD/CAM technologies, FEM, CAD, etc. But again, it was having its own limitations. So people thought of developing rapid prototyping, which is nothing but layer by layer material deposition. And it has become actually possible, or rather people started thinking about it during early 1980s or so, when there was enormous growth in computer-aided design manufacturing technologies along with the automation technologies. The concept is very simple. Like if you have to produce a product like this, you can machine by removing the metal layer by layer. You can join the two blocks, or you can deform a bulk of material, which is known as forming. But here in this case of additive manufacturing or 3D printing, it is a bottleneck process, but it is a bottom-up process that we have nothing in the beginning, and we deposit the material from bottom to the top. That's how there's a fabrication approach. So in this 3D printing, we start with the CAD modeling of the component, and the .prt file we save as a tessellated CAD model, and then this tessellated CAD model is sliced. It is sliced. The sliced model is actually the called layered model. It is the generation of layered model, and after that, we go ahead with using this digital model. We feed it to a 3D printer, and because of the 3D printer technology, there will be some computation which is being done by the 3D printer, because it depends on the kind of deposition technology it is having. It may be generation of laser scanning parts or material deposition parts, and then we go for the post-processing applications if in case they are needed, because definitely they are needed in many cases. And once the prototype is ready, you can test it. If it is found okay, it's fine. Otherwise, if there are drawbacks, you'll go back and you are going to change the CAD model of your component. So this is how we go ahead with the 3D printing processes. Correct? So I believe that you might have already heard about it because your course is dedicated to 3D printing. So we do the solid modeling, like suppose you have to make this kind of solid model, and this is known as some sort of tessellation. That in tessellation we try to approximate the free form surfaces into small triangles like this, and then we this is slicing. So once you slice, basically you are getting the nested polygons from bottom to the top, and you store them in a typical files like SLC or CLI, and then basically we are having the different systems. So we try to have different systems. They are based on the kind of material. So if you want to deposit the material, you need some technology. So that technology may be a liquid based technology, it may be a powder based technology, it may be a solid based technology. So depending upon the kind of 3D printing technology you are having, you have basically the generation of laser scanning paths or limited deposition paths calculation that is done in a software, which is either along with the 3D printer or maybe separately also in certain cases. And later on, you can do the post processing. So once you get the physical prototype with you, you can do the post curing operations. You can do the removal of support structure, and or you can finish by sanding or polishing or by painting. So these are the post curing operation. Now, support structure is an inherent feature of 3D printing, because if there's any overhanging feature, you have to look for support structure. You have to plan for support structure, because if you don't do that, there may be a problem, because later on where you will deposit. So in certain processes you have to do it, in certain processes you don't want, there's no need to do it. So I'll tell you those things in my forthcoming slides. So basically we call it rapid prototyping, because in few hours of time from CAD model to actual prototype you may have in your hand. Okay, then basically we are having the what kind of data that can be used as an input. So obviously the 3D CAD, I have already told you that 3D CAD can be used. You make STL and then you can drive a 3D printer. You can have 2D drawings or some other kind of 2D data which can be converted to 3D data using some softwares, and then you can have the STL file made and you drive the 3D printer. The other two are applications are little different. One is the reverse engineering application. Like if I'm having some old machine components, the drawing has been lost, or there's some monument or some idol is there, statues there, you want to scan that statue. So you will do using some reverse engineering scanner. You will find out the point cloud data, which you can use as an input to the reverse engineering software, and you can get a basically made a watertight 3D CAD model. You can make STL and you can drive the 3D printer. Or in the last one, this is very important because it has opened a new direction at all in the area of biomedical applications. So you can also have MRI or CT scan data, and that can be used to 3D reconstruction using some softwares like Simpleware or maybe Mimix, and then you can create STL file which can be used to make the components using 3D printing technique. So I have already told you that this rapid prototyping is important, because if you introduce this new way of model manufacturing in your product design cycle, it has potential to reduce the manufacturing lead time to as small as sometimes 10%. So like suppose you plan for your project in 100 weeks. If you introduce RP as a design tool, you may end up with completing your project only in 40 weeks or maybe sometimes in 20 weeks. So that kind of advantage you are going to get if you are using 3D printing as one of the processes. Okay, Then basically, if we want to classify these printers, we classify them based on the raw material which we use. So the raw material may be solid, it may be liquid. So most of the time for these commercial systems, we either have this we either have this solid as the system or liquid as the system. So if we are having solid, like it may be in wire form, it may be in powder form, one powder at a time or a blend of powders. And then we have foils also. So if it is a wire, we all know it is called fused filament deposition or FDM machine. If it is a powder, it is called selective laser sintering or melting. Or if it is a binder based powder 3D printer, or if it is a liquid one, the process is polymerization. The polymerization may be thermal induced, it may be UV lamp induced, it may be laser induced. So based on these various technologies are there. So I will talk about these technologies one by one, and then I'll try to show you some advanced processes also. So that is the objective here. So this was the first process actually which was developed long back. That was the first one in 1994. The first patent was filed. This is known as stereolithography. Here, actually, the concept is that you have to use photosensitive resin. The key thing is photosensitive monomer liquid. So that liquid has a property that if light above certain threshold frequency falls on it, there will be a polymerization reaction start. And so what we do, there's a movable mirror here, and what is being done, that you are pouring monomer liquid on this platform equal to one layer thickness, and then the laser beam comes from the top, and the laser spots start moving, scanning the area where you want it to be solidified. So below that, there's a voxel formation, there's a solidification process, which is a polymerization process that occurs, and you are able to deposit the layer. Then the platform moves down, you are pouring again the resin, monomer resin, and equal to one layer thickness, and again the laser comes from the top and scans wherever you want to make it solid, and that's how you deposit one layer over another, and you keep going it till the end. Now, if there's a need, if there's an overhanging feature like this, then you need to have a support structure. So one has to plan for the support structure in advance in case of stereolithography. So stereolithography basically has, I'll say, advantages like it uses liquid. So liquid can be spread in very fine layers, so the resolution of the process is quite high. At the same time, its surface quality is good, but at the same time, such materials are very limited in number. That is the limitation of this process. So then we have powder-based processes, which are quite versatile, because we may have number of such materials, though they are present in the powder forms. They may be polymer powders, they may be even they may be even the metal powders, they may be even sometimes ceramics, but not exactly in this case. So we are spreading the very fine layer of powder on the platform, and similarly the laser comes from the top and it scans the area. So wherever the laser goes, the powder gets melt and they fuse among each other, so you form a solid lump kind of thing. So that's how you are creating the component. Again, the platform will go down, new layer will be spread, and you are again doing the scanning by laser. So that's how you're creating the component layer by layer. So this is called sintering, SLS, sintering when we are doing it for polymers, and when we are doing it for metals, it is called SLM, solid selective laser melting. And this technology is called powder bed fusion technology, because powder gets fused. It is a bed fusion. So there's a bed of powder, and the powder particles fuse among each other in a particular layer. That's why the technology is known as powder bed fusion technology. So again, with the different slide, I can explain the same. So this is done in an enclosed chamber. For generally for accurate machines, for polymers we are using nitrogen environment, but for metals we need argon inert gas atmosphere. So this is how we are spreading the powder. Then the laser beam is exposed. So this brown color thing is actually the sintered material, and you can see that yellow color powder is unsintered powder, which acts like a support structure. So if you're manufacturing something in this technology using powder bed fusion technology, there's no need to deposit support structure. That is one of the advantages of this process. The platform moves down, and then you again recoat and you keep on doing this process. Then we have fuse deposition modeling process. That is the another important process which you have to see. So you all know about it. Most of the places you will see this process only. So in this process, basically, there's a ABS material wire, and this is being drawn in this nozzle. There's a heating arrangement inside it, and once it comes out, it is almost molten. And using XY control, you are depositing this material layer by layer. So that's how you are creating the things. Then laminated object manufacturing is another process which is important. So you are basically having this laminated object manufacturing. So here we are having the sheet material, and this sheet is being adhered by application of this heating roller. So this gets stick to this platform, and then laser is used to cut the material in this case. So cutting the material, and the platform goes down. The next laminate will come. It will get stick again by this laminating roller, and you keep on depositing the material from bottom to the top. So then let us move to the latest concept now, that is the laser engineered net shaping. So this is also known as direct energy deposition process. This laser engineered net shaping is something like here. I'll show you in my advanced slides. So there's a conical channel. The powder comes down from here, suspended in maybe in argon gas. The laser is from the center, and there's an XY movement. So you're able to deposit the material. Different components have been shown here. So this is one of the latest technology in the area of metal deposition, which is also known as powder blown technology, correct? So this is how the interface looks like. There are different names for such technology. There is a little difference here and there based on, so direct energy deposition, LMD, laser metal deposition, lens, direct metal deposition, and DMD. And this is the interface of powder bed technology. So this is powder blown technology, it's powder bed technology. This is how the component is made. So before moving to the applications, let me show you the advanced processes first, so that you can enjoy this thing. So yeah, so this is called direct energy deposition. So this is what I was trying to show you, that this is a laser. The powder comes from here, and you are able to deposit the material. So with this video, in the next slide, you can have a feel of the process. Okay, so this is the video. Now you can see the virtual simulation. This is called virtual simulation of the process. Okay, then so there are some points written here. I think there are certain advantages and limitations of this process. So one is obviously the poor surface quality, significant post-processing is needed, part complexity is limited, but at the same time, the density is very good. Support structure is not needed because you can see the way it has been done and can be used for repairing work also. And it can also be used to create the functionally graded materials. So this direct energy deposition technology has various applications in the field of aerospace, automotive, repairing of components, nuclear, and of course in the biomedical applications. Then in LMD is also the similar process. You can see the concept is almost same, similar kind of, but only the controls are little different. Very fine differences are there. So here the challenges are that very complex models, process structure property relationships are there, complex thermal histories and anisotropies, a lot of anisotropies there. It's very expensive systems. All these systems are very expensive. Here the distortion is lower comparatively, correct? That's how the control have been developed. Then we can see the electron beam additive manufacturing. So this electron beam additive manufacturing is something which is available basically in two ways. One is the powder bed system is there, that instead of having laser, you are having a high energy electron beam. So this is the high energy electron beam. On this platform, it is melting and depositing. So it is known as EBAM process, vacuum process. It is done in vacuum, and there are very good, excellent mechanical properties because it eliminates impurities. There's another variant of this process that is having a wire-based system. So there's a wire here, and we are having electron beam coming from like this, and it is melting and depositing. So there are two kinds of, variants are there. So we have variety of advantages and limitations. So then, so there are a number of applications. There are a lot of biomedical applications. You can make very fine. I'll show you some components later on, which are very complex components. You can see in different domains, including ballistic materials, refractory, nuclear, medical, cladding of surfaces, corrosion barriers. A lot of applications are there for this process. Then WAM, wire arc additive manufacturing, is another concept. There are commercial machines which are available. You can see from this simulation that how really this welding is used. Welding wire is used to create and deposit the material. So there's a lot of science behind that. Controls have to be very, very precise and accurate. That's what is the requirement. So this is another one. The WAM, once again, a video for wire arc additive manufacturing. Yeah. So there are different benefits of WAM. There's a wide range of deposition rates. Very high deposition rates can be achieved. Near net shape and therefore reduced material loss, conventional machining time reduced to minimum, lead times are less, integrity of structure is good, low to medium complexity components can be made. But the limitations are there's a lot of residual stresses and distortions. Correct? You need shielding gases for reactive materials like titanium deposition. Low resolution is there. Various components which can be machined by VAM have been shown here. So you can see. Then this is the last advanced technology. One more is there, I think. Yeah, multi-jet fusion. This is HP printer. You can see that is one of the latest, I think, developed 2-3 years back only. So here it is a powder bed kind of process, but you can see here there are two motions. One is leftward, rightward, other is inward and outward. Correct? These are the two motions. So if you see, basically here it's quite fast also, because you are using chemicals, like you are using detailing agent and fusing agent, and also you are exposing it with the UV light. So that's kind of thing is there. There's a lamp passes over the surface constantly. So that kind of thing is there in this case. So various materials can be here you can use polyurethane. They are flexible materials, and polyamide is a very we have strong materials having good strength and surface quality. So it is a very high resolution and dimensional accuracy process. You can see these are the various components which have been produced by this HP printer. And then I would like to talk about DLP process, digital light processing. So through this video you can
use a light projector, similar to what you would find in a movie theater, to project the image of an entire layer simultaneously, regardless of the number of parts. Because they carry a full layer in a single flash, DLP printers can be outstandingly fast. They are also very reliable with low complexity and dim.
So basically the difference is with SLA. Here also you are using monomer, but in case of SLA there's a spot of laser which keeps moving. But in this case you are having basically a digital surface here, which is based on pixels, and you are controlling the outlet of the light, which may be sometimes a very simple lamp, and it is exposing the material, the entire layer in one go. So basically it uses a more conventional light source and a digital projector screen to flash a single image of each layer across the entire platform at once. So that is the difference. So it may be quite fast printer, but definitely you cannot say fast in every aspect, because if the sections are very fine, the detailing is very much, then this may also be better. So it's very difficult to compare the two printers, but obviously this is a new technology. So these are some components which have been made by DLP. They have been shown in this particular slide. Then this is the TPP process, 2-photon polymerization 3D printing technique. Here basically again we are using the liquid monomer resin, but here actually the laser comes like this, and the concept is not single photon polymerization, but it is a 2-photon polymerization. The idea is that when the intensity is above certain threshold like this, then you are able to deposit the voxel, and the size of this voxel is as small as 100 nanometer in this case. So the resolution of this process becomes very, very high. So it's a very high resolution process, complementary to 2PP microscopy. Online process observation is there, and because you can deposit material in a very small volumes, you can even do the process in the presence of biological tissues and cells. So you need to have biocompatible initiators, that is challenge, and the low toxicity monomers are required if you want to do that. And this TPP process has again variety of applications in the different domains of engineering, which includes beta materials, tissue engineering, photonics, MEMS, microelectronics, and plasmonics. So some components which have been made by TPP, that is 2-photon polymerization process, you can see here, like this is a micro optics, this is a prism kind of components. You can see the dimension, 60 micrometer. So this is less than 60 micrometer. This is 23 micrometers the dimension. And so you can see what is the size of these things, you know. This is a scaffold. This size is around 200 micrometers, this dimension. This is 100 micrometers and 40 micrometers this. So it's a scaffold cell biology application. And then we have these micro needles for drug delivery. So you can see their dimensions and the kind of holes they are there. So they are only possible with this kind of 2-photon microscopy, correct? So this is this thing. Then let me come back to this applications once again. So I'll just go through because I'll stop in 5 minutes. So there are the applications may be in CAD model verification for engineering analysis planning, biomedical I have already told you, and there are so many applications for manufacturing and tooling in the area of investment casting, die casting, vacuum metal spraying, EDM electrodes, etc. They can be made by these processes. This is what I have already explained to you, that you have MRI, CT image acquisition. This is how they look like using softwares like Mimix or Simple, where you create these 3D print, this STL file, and then you're printing it and you're able to do these kinds of things. So some products you can just have a look, correct? These are the medical products. So this is EBAM product, electron beam additive manufacturing made components. They are implants, basically hip and knee implants. This is made by SLM process. This particular and this particular is made by EBAM process. The dental implant made by SLM kind of process. These are aerospace applications. You are making this repairing or making these blades using this thing. Then very typical components, you can see the kind of geometry it has. This is called a topologically optimized structure. They can be done through this 3D printing kind of processor only. Correct? This is a die which has been directly created by SLM kind of machine. This is a plastic component for this vehicle. They're directly making their headlamp using rapid manufacturing SLS machine. So they are actually painting it by spray paint in order to improve its strength and surface quality. So this is how the finished painted headlamp. This some beautiful artifacts. They can be produced by this process. But in the next generation additive manufacturing, what we want to make smart components. The smart components will have some sensors embedded, correct? They will have optical sensors, electrical sensors, structural sensors embedded in the components, and they will provide you the signal when they are under operation, so that you can have an idea about, you know, this thing. So like there's a machine component, and when it is working, when it's under operation, you will keep getting the signals, and when something is likely to go wrong because of the change in signal, you will be able to detect the problem which is likely to happen soon, and you will be able to do it soon, rectify it soon. So complexity of the objects to be manufactured is not a limitation in 3D printing, but still there are challenges. Some of them have been met, some of them are still struggling. So, but still now today we have come at a stage that we can even use these processes as the manufacturing processes, but they are only economically viable when we talk about the customized manufacturing. I cannot recommend them for mass manufacturing. They cannot work there. For that, the hard automation concept still has its own edge, its own importance. So with this, I'm stopping here. So thank you very much for your patient hearing. And if there are any questions, you can ask me, and then I'll hand over to my PhD scholar, Mr. Jaswinder Singh, who is a very senior PhD scholar, likely to submit his thesis soon. So he will be talking about it in the for the another 20 minutes or so. And so okay, then fine. So if there are any questions, I am here for 5 minutes to answer those questions. So is anybody there? Dr. Mahapatra, are you there?
Yes, sir. Participants, if you have any queries, you can unmute yourself and ask. Else, you can put it in the chat box. You can go ahead and ask. Sir, there is a query from the students. Means my MTech student. Actually, they are asking what is the scope for printing functionally graded material plate having a combination of metal and ceramic.
Metal and ceramic, you can do. I think either the lens will work in this case, but you have to make certain modifications. Maybe it may not be direct. And the second, maybe you can read some of my papers, that you can develop your own way of doing it economically by having some sort of rapid tooling kind of applications. So you can refer some of my latest papers by Pawan Sharma or by Deepesh Mishra, and you can have a feel of those things. Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Pulak sir, namaste.
Namaskar.
This is Kalijan. I am attending the third webinar talk from your end.
Yeah. So how
Sir,
do you find it?
Yeah, little bit network issue is here, sir. How are you, sir?
Yeah, I'm good. Yeah.
Yeah, sir. Also, last time I want to discuss with you, due to the network problem, I couldn't able to talk with you, and I have not taken the suggestion. Sir, one thing I have a doubt here, sir. Whenever the surface, you can say that through the counter plot by the nozzle, if we were taking the critical agent corner, we are getting some either geometrical mismatch or a certain pinpointed corner we are not getting.
You are talking about which process?
Sir, powder metallurgy, ceramics mixture material.
No. Are you talking about additive manufacturing or something else?
Yes, sir. Additive manufacturing only.
Which process?
Rapid monitoring for the power mixing, sir. Hello.
I'm not getting your process.
Sir. Whenever the nozzle is filling the material in a layer by layer manner, okay, na, sir. When the model it is in a corner, in a pinpointed corner like that, if you are giving the model, then on that model the corner point is not going in a proper manner
Yeah,
for
Mr. Dr. Rath, I am actually, first you tell me on which process you are working. It is FDM or stereolithography or
No. FDM, sir. Field.
FDM process.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Either the geometrical description, so we are getting there, sir.
Geometrical
Description we are getting there. If you are giving a pinpointed model, okay, sir, in any corner, if it is a pinpointed model, then during the formation of that model, when is the deposit of material will be there.
Yeah, that's what is the limitation, na? That the resolution of the machine becomes important here. Correct. So
Yes, sir.
if like in case of FDM, your layer thickness is around 250 microns.
Yes, sir.
Okay?
Yes, sir.
So if you are having any geometry which is smaller than that, or if it is less, if it is not an integer multiple of that, then you will have a trouble.
Okay.
So that's how stair-stepping effect and all those things becomes important.
Yes, sir. Is there can possibility of a modification of that one, or it is the limitation of that machine, sir? That is the one confusion with me.
You have to do secondary operations for that. What I talk about, the post-processing operations.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Somebody has asked a question, strength of 3D printed product is higher or lower than cast product. So if I talk about metal components, definitely the 3D printing components have much more strength as compared to casted components. And if you optimize your parameters in a proper way, in case of lens process, it has already been shown by researchers that the strength has been achieved as good as the forged components. So strength is not a problem. You can get strength in case of metal prototyping by DED process as good as forging process. But you have to optimize the parameters. Okay, so with this, I think I'm winding up. It is already 11:05. So I'm handing over this session to Jaswinder. And Jaswinder,
Yes,
please,
sir.
what you do, you first show the machines, correct?
Okay, sir.
And later on, you can, talk about the softwares and other things if time permits. Otherwise, the best thing would be you focus on the machines. That will be great. Correct?
Okay. Okay, sir.
So, Mr. Dr. Mahapatra, I am leaving now. Correct?
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you, sir, for kindly accepting our invitation within a very short span of time and sparing time for this particular FDP with such an informative and valuable talk. It is always a pleasure to listen to you, sir. We look forward to listen to you in future as well. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
So, thank you everyone once again. For some other queries, you may visit my website also and see that you can see some of our latest papers, and your many questions will be answered with those papers. So I'm now leaving the meeting. Jaswinder will take care. So Jaswinder, you can share the presentation, and I'm leaving now. Huh?
Okay, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Good morning to all of you. Dr. Mahapatra, please, I am disconnecting from the my desktop screen, and now I'm joining on my mobile so that I can show you the different printers which we are having in our lab. So please mind that if I have any problem, please join me.
Sure. Welcome, Jaswinder, and we
I'm
look forward
disconnecting from
to
the desktop.
this particular session.
Okay, sir. I am
Yes,
disconnecting home. Okay, you will receive an request for join me. Hello. Hello.
yes, you are audible.
I'm audible. Okay, sir. Now again, good morning to all of you.
You,
Today,
you
we will.
can be a bit louder. Uh, if you can be a bit louder, it will be better.
Okay. Hello. Is it okay now?
Yes. Now it is perfect.
Okay. Okay, as you have already learned about the additive manufacturing, what is the additive manufacturing and how the procedure follows in for manufacturing in the additive systems. So in our lab, we have various kinds of the polymer printers. You can say polymer kinds of the 3D printer. Generally, we have the number of the classification of additive manufacturing processes. But in our lab, we classify these printers on the basis of the materials which are being used here. So accordingly, we can divide our printers which we are having here into the three categories of material, raw materials like liquid, polymer, and liquid, solid, and the powder base. In the liquid base, we use the monomer units, which is being used for printing that print the final shape by polymerization of the monomer unit. In the secondary case, we have the solid material in which a wire spool material is used, in which a filament wire of 1.75 mm diameter is being used for printing any final part or shape. And the third kind of the printer we have, that is the SLS, or you can say powder based system, in which the polymer powder of the very small particle size of 25 to 100 micron, they are being used for the fabricating any shape by sintering the powder particles into the desired desired geometry. So first, I am going to show you the solid base material printer which we are having here. Is it visible to all? Uh,
Yes, it is visible.
Okay, okay. This is you can say basic kind of the FDM based system. FDM means fused deposition molding based system, in which a solid base material is being used for printing any part. In this solid base material is available in the form of the spool. I will show you. You can see here we have the spool here. Is it visible? You can see there are the two spools. This is the first one, and that one is the secondary spool. Okay. So in this we have the two spool as here. This is the main material spool that is at the right side, and this is the support material spool that is on the left side. So in this we have the two kind of the extruder. You can see here the wires guide are available here. These are the pipes which are guiding the filament wires into the nozzle. Here you can see power. You can see here we have the two kinds of the nozzle. Is it visible? This is the first nozzle, and this is the second nozzle. In this two extruder means the main first extruder is the for main material supplying. Second one is the for supplying the support material. As you know, for making any cavity portion in the 3D printing, we have to supply a support so that a cavity or overhang portion can be built on the previously built layer. So for that purpose, we use generally support material which can be removed after the printing of final part. In this, we have two nozzles. This and this both are of the same diameter size, 0.4 mm, and this is our power bed, or you can say printing bed. This is the printing bed. Always the fabrication or printing will be done during the printing process, and these both of the nozzles are the heating kind of the nozzle, and even our printing bed is also a heating type, because we have to reduce the temperature gradient during the printing. So we have to maintain a range of the temperature in between nozzle and the printing bed. So in our case, we have to print the ABS material. Generally in our lab we are generally using the ABS, acrylonitrile butadiene styrene material for the printing purposes. This is the main material. And second one is the HFES, high intensity polystyrene. That is the support material which is being used in conjunction with the ABS. Both of the filaments, ABS filament and HFES filament, have the temperature range of the 225 degrees Celsius for their heating or melting, so that their extrusion can be easily done. So in this temperature of the nozzle 225 and powder, so printing bed temperature is 108 degrees Celsius. This can be varied according to the raw material which is being used. Another materials, main material that can be used here are the PLA, PC, and high density polyethylene. These are the materials can be used for the printing purposes in the FDM based system. So this is a control panel you can see here, where the display is showing the range of the temperature. When we will start the printer, there will be the display of the temperature of all of the system, that is two nozzles and one printing mat. In this we generally used to import a G-code file of any CAD model. So G-code file is firstly STL file is made in the CAD model. That STL file is sliced into a particular software which is being used for the FDM based system. From that slicing software we generate a G-code file which is being used for the printing in FDM. So after generating the G-code file, a card system, or you can say USB system, can be used for the importing the file. Here is the system given in the FDM base, that we can directly use the SD card, or we can also use the USB type, USB B type. B type USB can be used for loading the part for printing. After loading the part, here is the panel. You can see direct we will go to the card menu. From the card menu we will select the part which we need to print. Then after selecting that we will push the button, this button, and print will be start. You can see here how the printer will go. I have just demonstrating how this will move. You can see bed is moving to the 0 0 position. Okay, now you can see here that students are coming to the 0 0 position as well. In this way the printing will done in the FDM based system. In the second, you can also see here that another kind of the FDM based printer in which the same principle is being used for printing any part, but this is the advanced version of the printer. In this, we have printing speed in the range of 100 mm per second. However, in this printer, we are using the printing speed up to the 72 or 60 mm per second speed. The remaining features of that printer, that FDM based printer, is the same as similar to this one. Now I'm going to show you another printer, that is the liquid based material printer. You can see here this is a SLA, stereolithography printer, in which a liquid based material is being used for printing any part. The monomer unit, you can say, or resin, you can say, is being used in this printer. This is a container where the initial raw material, or you can say liquid material, will be filled before the printing. This is our printing bed. This is our printing bed. This will go down during printing into the resin bed, or you can say resin container. In this single kind of the material is being used in the liquid form, so that liquid material will not be directly poured here. The material will be loaded into a cartridge, and that cartridge will be loaded at the back side. You can see here, this is a cartridge of the liquid material which is being used for the filling any monomer unit or liquid resin during before the printing. This is a liquid based material in which polymerization of the material cure the material and form a part into the solid shape. The resolution of this printer is of the range of 25 microns. As compared to the FDM based printer, this is a very good or have a very high accuracy, because the FDM based printer has a 100 microns of the layer resolution. This has the 25 micron of the layer resolution, so part accuracy is very much higher as compared to previous printers you have seen earlier. So this is a resin based or liquid based classification which we are having in our lab. This is supplied by the Form Lab, and this is the Form 3 Plus printer which is being used now. Earlier we were using the Form 1 printer, but we have upgraded the printer now. This is the Form 3 which is supplied by the Form Lab. And next one is the liquid based, powder based material. You can say SLS. SLS based material. SLS is the selective laser sintering. Previous one was the SLA stereolithography, and this is the selective laser sintering, in which the powder polymer is being used for fabrication. Actually, particle size can be of the range of 25 to 100 microns here. In this, we are using the PA12 powder material. PA12 is the patented material which is being supplied by the company. However, the particle size in the PA12 is in the range of 100 to 200 microns. So that can also be used. That depend upon the powder material or which you are having in your application. Here you can see I'm showing you the interior of the printer. In this, we are using two kinds of the bed. This is a reservoir, or you can say a container bed. This is a printing bed. Both are the bed are moving, are movable bed which can move up and down. Why we are using the moving beds? Because we need to supply the bed to the from the container bed to the printing bed. Here is the recorder. You can see here. This is a recorder. This recorder can be moved along this guide slide. This is a guide of the recorder which align the movement during the printing. In this, the powder initial the raw material powder bed is maintained here, and a level of some powder thickness is also maintained here, so that initially the powder should be available before printing start. During printing, what will happen? This recorder will coat a layer of the powder on this printing bed. The thickness of the layer of the powder will be decided by you, as we have to slice any of the CAD model. Then during the slicing procedure, we generally provide the layer thickness, printing speed, and another parameters for the printing. So the height of the layer which will be provided by this recorder on this bed will depend upon you, that how much you have given the layer thickness value according to the powder will be supplied here. And after that, a laser, IR laser will come from the upper side and will fall on this and center the powder particles according to your CAD model. And final shape will be removed after removing the uncured powder particles from here. In this, we have a facility. You can see here all of the printer from all the side printer is the covered. Printer is covered from all the side. If you want to know that part is printing well or not, you can see from the upper side material. This is the upper side mirror. From this mirror, you can see the part is printing well or not. If the printing is not occurring good, then you can stop the printing in between the process. Besides this, we are also having another kind of the printer, that is the BioBoard. This is a BioBoard printer. Actually, this is why I'm showing this. This is a medical based printer in which we can print any kind of the medical implant here. We can also print the artificial limbs, for example, eyelid and ear organs in the artificial mode. We can also make a tissue engineer parts like scaffold, which earlier have been fabricated by one of my colleagues in the lab, and he is doing the research on that part. In this, we are having two students, in which one is the main and second one is the Scandium student. In this, Scandium student can also be used for the support material addition, and also this can also be used for supplying any drug, any live cells, or you can say any medicine, or any another kind of natural polymer in conjunction with the synthetic polymer. So this is the whole of the system for printing any biome plant. Generally, the printing in this is not directly done upon this bed. This is a printing bed, but printing is not being done here. We for making any medical part, medical organ, medical implant, we generally use the petri dish. You can see here in this printed dish. First, the dish is sterilized to remove any bacteria. Then this dish is placed over here, and printing is being started. And okay, and all these are the printers which we are having in our lab are still working, and students are doing their research works and internship, or you can say we are also doing their PhD work directly on these printers. Okay, sir. Hello. Hello.
Hello. Yes.
Is this okay, or we have any further time? I can show you the.
We have 6 minutes more. If the
Then
participants
I
need
think
to see
yes,
anything, they can ask you. Uh,
yes, sir. Hello. Are you having any queries? Please, you can ask me.
I don't think they have any queries. If you like to show anything else, you can go ahead, or else we can conclude here.
I think we should end here because in 5 minutes I cannot explain anything more now because I need approximately
Okay,
1 hour.
participants, if you want to have any query, then you can go ahead. Else, we will be concluding here. There is a query from Nathan Raghu. He's asking, is organ implants natural animal polymers or plant polymers?
Sir, both of the natural polymers and synthetic polymers, I have already told you that we can print. So there is no limitation in that printer. We generally, I have seen many of the researchers are working on the natural polymers in connection with the synthetic polymers. So limitation is not there. But one thing I want to add that in some of the cases we have to maintain a viscosity of the material. So in that case, some kinds of the amendments are required in some cases because some of the natural polymers are so viscous or some of are less viscous. So we have to maintain the viscosity for printing.
Is all the printing machine?
Yes, sir. Yes, we are having all the printers of polymer kinds. All the materials can print only polymer. Besides, in market we also have the metal powder, metallic polymer 3D printer, metallic 3D printer, and even ceramic 3D printers are also available.
Can you tell us the cost aspect? Means if we go for preparing a 3D printer for printing ceramic material, uh, it means what I was suggesting to a certain modification, we can do it. Actually, our objective is to print a functionally graded material plate having a combination of metal and ceramic. So server
Okay.
suggesting we can do it with certain modifications. So we want to know about the cost aspect, means uh, how economical it is.
Sir, actually, all the printers in IIT Delhi are from the company. Actually, we have not made any customized printer as well. So, separate cost I cannot tell. I can only tell about the whole of the cost of the printer as we are having in the lab. Because actually, modification requires some of the additional parts. We were also trying for some another application to impart in our, or you can say to impose in our printer. So that depends on your requirement that how much or what kind of the feature you want in your printer and what kind of the component can be added in your printer.
Okay. So I think we can conclude now, participants, or you have any other queries? Thank you so much.